The email arrived with the quiet finality of a tombstone sealing shut. Leo Thorne read it once. Then again, the words blurring into a soup of corporate speak and unbearable excitement. His agent, Brenda, was CC'd, her own follow-up message a torrent of exclamation points and capital letters that felt like physical blows. This is it, Leo. The big one. Chimera Press is thrilled to announce a 20-city national tour for the final installment of the best-selling Ethelgard Chronicles. All expenses paid, personal escort from a publicist, Sarah. This is going to solidify you two as legends. You two. The phrase was a cage. Leo leaned back in his worn leather chair, the one that had molded itself to the shape of his solitary frustrations and triumphs. His study was a sanctuary of organized chaos, towers of research books, maps of fictional worlds pinned to the wall, the faint, comforting scent of old paper and coffee. From his window, the Seattle rain streaked the glass in long, gray tears, perfectly matching his mood. On the other side of the city, in a minimalist apartment that looked more like a showroom than a home, Elara Vance received the same news. She was standing at her kitchen island, sipping a perfectly calibrated green smoothie, when her phone chimed. She read the email, her face a masterpiece of composed elegance, betraying nothing. Only a slight tightening at the corner of her mouth, a tiny fracture in the marble, indicated her displeasure. Her reply to Brenda was succinct. Understood. Please send the full itinerary. I'll coordinate my packing. Then, she opened the other necessary email, the one to Leo. Lau, I assume you've seen Brenda's email. I've attached a draft packing list and a proposed schedule for our travel days to maximize writing time. We should also standardize our talking points for the Q&A sessions. I'll call at 7 p.m. to discuss. Elara. Professional. Efficient. Cold. It was the tone of their entire 7-year partnership. Leo read her email and sighed, running a hand through his already disheveled dark hair. Elara's 7 p.m. call would be a military operation. He pictured her, seated at a pristine desk, a leather-bound notebook open, pen poised, every second of the conversation pre-planned. He, on the other hand, would probably be fumbling for a legal pad, surrounded by half-empty mugs, the ghost of last night's pizza still lingering in the air. They were a literary phenomenon, the engine behind the Ethelgard Chronicles, a series that had sold millions by weaving a tale of epic fantasy around the simmering, slow-burn romance between the warrior Queen Anya and the rogue mastermind Kale. Readers devoured their books, praising the electric chemistry between the characters, the palpable tension that made their every interaction crackle with unspoken desire. The irony was a bitter pill Leo had long since learned to swallow. The chemistry on the page was a mirage, a carefully constructed illusion built over countless late-night drafting sessions conducted via video call, their faces pixelated and voices lagging across the digital divide. He was the architect of Kale's roguish charm and hidden vulnerability. She was the soul of Anya's fierce independence and guarded heart. Together, they created a perfect, fictional whole. In reality, they were a business partnership, a brilliantly successful one, held together by mutual respect for each other's talent and a shared, unspoken agreement to never, ever cross the line. The line was their sanctuary. It kept the magic on the page and the messy complications of real life at bay. When his phone rang at exactly 7 p.m., Leo took a deep breath before answering. Elara. Lau. Her voice was crisp, clear, like a winter morning. I've outlined the key points. First, the itinerary. It's aggressive. We start in New York, then Boston, D.C., down to Atlanta, across to Chicago, and then the West Coast loop. We have 12 flights in 21 days. God, Leo groaned. I hate flying. A fact I am well aware of, she said, her tone devoid of sympathy. Which is why I've requested aisle seats for you on every leg. I've also noted the signing schedules. Some are 3-hour blocks. We need to pace ourselves. Right. And the talking points. We stick to the script. The genesis of the series, the collaborative process, the challenges of ending a beloved story. We avoid any personal questions. The "are you two a couple" speculation has been beneficial for sales, but we don't feed it directly. Leo felt a familiar pang. The speculation was a constant, low-grade hum in their professional lives. Fans shipped them with the same fervor they shipped Anya and Kale. They saw two single, attractive people who had created one of the great literary romances of their generation and assumed life must imitate art. They didn't see the chasm that lay between Leo's intuitive, emotion-driven writing and Elara's meticulous, plot-focused outlines. They didn't see the arguments that could last for days over a single line of dialogue, the tense silences, the fundamental differences that made their collaboration both brilliant and exhausting. "Of course," Leo said. "Stick to the script." There was a pause on the other end of the line, a rare moment of hesitation from Elara. "There is one more thing." Sarah, the publicist, suggested an onstage reading of the final scene between Anya and Kale. Leo's breath caught. The final scene. The culmination of 7 books of build-up. The confession, the kiss, the union that their readers have been breathlessly awaiting for a decade. He had written Kale's part, the raw, unvarnished admission of love that he had poured his soul into. Elara had written Anya's response, a surrender that was also a victory. "You think that's a good idea?" he asked, his voice tighter than he intended. "It's what the fans want," she said, her tone back to its practical default. "It's good marketing. We'll read it in New York. It will set the tone for the tour." Good marketing. The words deflated him. To him, that scene was more than marketing. It was a piece of him offered up to a character born from her mind. But he would never say that. "Fine. We'll read the scene." "Good. I'll email you the finalized itinerary. I'll see you at JFK, Terminal 4, on the 14th. Don't be late, Leo." The call ended. Leo stared out at the darkening, rain-slicked city. For 7 years, their partnership had existed in the comfortable space between 2 cities, 2 screens, 2 separate lives. Now, for 21 days, they would be trapped in a bubble of airports, hotel rooms, and green rooms. The line was about to be tested. JFK was a special kind of chaos, a symphony of rolling suitcases, blaring announcements, and the weary faces of thousands of people in transit. Leo, feeling rumpled and off balance, spotted Elara immediately. She was an island of calm in the storm, standing near their designated meeting spot with a single, sleek carry-on and a structured tote bag. She looked like she'd stepped out of a travel catalog. Tailored trousers, a soft cashmere sweater, sunglasses perched on her head. He, in his comfortable jeans and a slightly wrinkled jacket, felt like her scruffy, unprepared cousin. "You made it," she said, her eyes doing a quick, assessing scan of him. It wasn't judgmental, just observational. "Barely," he grumbled, hefting his overstuffed backpack. The Uber driver took the scenic route through every traffic jam in Queens. "I budgeted for that. We have ample time." She handed him a small, printed booklet. "I've compiled the itinerary, our flight and hotel confirmations, and Sarah's contact details. I have a digital copy, but I find physical backups reassuring." Of course she did. Leo took it, feeling the weight of her impeccable organization. "Thanks." Their publicist, Sarah, found them before they could lapse into awkward silence. She was a whirlwind of energy, a woman in her 30s with a sharp smile and a tablet glued to her hand. "Now, Elara, so wonderful to finally meet you in person. You look fantastic, ready for the ride of your lives." The next few hours were a blur. Check-in, security, the wait at the gate. Leo fidgeted, his fear of flying a low-grade thrummed in his veins. Elara, meanwhile, pulled out a laptop and began working, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She was drafting notes for their next project, a standalone novel they'd barely begun to discuss. On the plane, seated in adjacent aisle seats as she had arranged, the silence stretched. It was different from their working silences. This was thick, loaded with the unspoken reality of their proximity. "Nervous?" Elara asked suddenly, not looking up from her screen. "About the tour?" "A bit." About this metal tube flying at 35,000 feet? Terrified, a ghost of a smile touched her lips. Statistically, it's far safer than your drive to the airport. Logic doesn't really help the lizard brain, Elara. She finally glanced at him, then distract herself. We have the reading tonight. We should run the lines. He stared at her. Now, on the plane. Is there a better time? We're trapped here for the next 5 hours. And so, at 30,000 feet over Pennsylvania, they began to rehearse the most intimate scene they had ever written. Leo pulled out his dog-eared copy of the book. He cleared his throat, feeling self-conscious. You start, he said. Elara took a breath, and when she spoke, her voice changed. It softened, lost its businesslike edge, and took on the resonant, weary strength of Queen Anya. I have spent a lifetime building walls, Kale. Walls of duty, of crown, of steel. You have spent a lifetime slipping past them as if they were morning mist. Her delivery was perfect. It sent a shiver down Leo's spine. He looked at her, really looked. He saw the intense focus in her gray eyes, the way her brow furrowed slightly. For a moment, she wasn't Elara Vance, his frustratingly controlled partner. She was Anya, laying her heart bare. He found his own voice, dropping into the low, rough cadence of Kale. And you think I did not bleed on the thorns of those walls, Anya? You think my heart did not tear itself to shreds every time I had to walk away? They went back and forth, the words they had crafted together now hanging in the recycled air between them. The world outside the window was a blanket of clouds, isolating them. The hum of the engines faded into the background. It was just them and the words. They reached the climax. Kale's confession. Leo's eyes met Elara's. He wasn't just reciting anymore. He was feeling it. The years of longing, of fighting, of unspoken connection that he, Leo, had poured into this fictional man. I have loved you since the moment you threatened to have me thrown in the dungeons for insolence. I have loved you in every council meeting, on every battlefield, in every quiet moment I stole in your presence. This is not a choice. It is my truth, as fundamental as the blood in my veins. Elara's breath hitched. Her gaze was locked on his, wide and unguarded. The practice control was gone, replaced by a raw, startled vulnerability. She was supposed to deliver Anya's next line, the simple, devastating, then stop walking away. But she didn't speak. She just stared at him, her lips slightly parted, as if seeing him for the very first time. The silence stretched, charged, and electric. A jolt of turbulence shook the plane, breaking the spell. Elara blinked, looked down at her book, and flushed a delicate pink. It was the most human, unscripted reaction he had ever seen from her. I think we have it, she said, her voice barely a whisper, all business once more, but the facade was cracked. Leo leaned back in his seat, his heart hammering against his ribs. It wasn't the turbulence. It was the look in her eyes. For a single, breathtaking moment, the line had not just been blurred, it had vanished completely. New York was a whirlwind. The first event, held in a grand, old bookstore with soaring ceilings and the smell of centuries of literature, was a sold-out spectacle. Hundreds of fans packed the rows of chairs, their faces glowing with anticipation. Seeing them, hearing the murmurs of excitement as they took the stage, was a potent antidote to the strange tension of the flight. On stage, they fell into their familiar rhythm. Leo was the charming, slightly self-deprecating one, making the crowd laugh with stories of his writing mishaps. Elara was the poised, articulate intellectual, delivering sharp insights into world-building and character motivation. They were a well-rehearsed duet, their differences complementing each other perfectly. They fielded questions, signed books, and posed for pictures. The professional mask was firmly back in place. But when the time came for the reading, the air in the room changed. The lights seemed to dim, the crowd hushed. Sarah introduced it as a special, exclusive preview of the finale. Leo and Elara moved to the center of the stage, each holding their book. Their eyes met, and the memory of the airplane, that unguarded moment, flashed between them. He saw a flicker of apprehension in her gaze before she schooled her features into neutrality. They began. Once more, the words transformed them. Leo's voice, as Kale, was full of a raw, aching need that felt terrifyingly real. Elara, as Anya, responded with a vulnerability that made the audience collectively hold its breath. They weren't just reading, they were performing, channeling the very emotions they had created. When Leo delivered Kale's confession, "I have loved you since the moment you threatened to have me thrown in the dungeons," he wasn't looking at the page. He was looking at Elara. And this time, she didn't look away. Her response, when it came, was a soft, breathless sigh into the microphone, then stopped walking away. The script called for Kale to close the distance between them and kiss her. In the book, it was a seismic event, a union a decade in the making. Here, on stage, there was no kiss. They simply stood, a foot apart, the tension between them so thick it was a physical presence. The silence in the room was absolute, pregnant with the shared emotion of 1,000 hearts beating in unison. Then, the spell broke. The audience erupted. The applause was deafening, a roaring wave of catharsis and joy. People were on their feet, cheering, some wiping tears from their eyes. Leo and Elara stepped back, bowing slightly. He felt flushed, disoriented, as if he'd just run a marathon. He risked a glance at Elara. She was smiling at the crowd, but it was a brittle smile, not reaching her eyes. Her hands, he noticed, were trembling slightly. The rest of the event passed in a blur. At the post-event dinner with the publishers, they were lauded as geniuses. The chemistry, one executive gushed. It was electric. You two truly are Anya and Kale. Elara accepted the compliment with a graceful nod. It's all in the writing, she said, her voice smooth as glass. Later, in the shared town car back to the hotel, the silence was heavy. The partition was up, leaving them in a plush, dark cocoon. The lights of the city streaked past, painting fleeting patterns on their faces. That went well, Elara said, her voice carefully neutral. The audience response was exactly what the publishers were hoping for. It was more than that, Leo said quietly, staring out the window. It felt different. It's a powerful scene. It's designed to evoke a strong response. Elara, he said, turning to look at her. You felt it too. Don't pretend you didn't. She met his gaze, her face half in shadow. For a long moment, she said nothing. The car slowed for a red light, and the interior was bathed in a sudden, harsh crimson glow. What I feel is irrelevant, she said finally, her voice low. We have a job to do, Leo. A tour to finish. We can't afford to get lost in the fiction. What if it's not just fiction? The question hung in the air, bold and dangerous. She looked away, toward her own window. It has to be. Our partnership, it works because of the distance. We can't ruin what we've built over a momentary illusion. The car started moving again, plunging her back into darkness. The conversation was over. The line had been redrawn, but it felt fragile now, drawn in sand instead of stone. The tour became a strange, pressurized dance. City after city, Boston, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, blurred into a montage of hotel lobbies, signing tables, and stages. The reading of the scene became their signature act, the emotional peak of every event. And every time, the same electric current passed between them. Every time, the line blurred a little more. They learned things about each other that 7 years of video calls had never revealed. Leo learned that Elara took her coffee black, but had a secret, profound weakness for cheap, greasy diner food after events, a fact she was deeply embarrassed by. He discovered the small, almost invisible tells of her anxiety, the way she would trace the rim of her water glass before a big Q&A, the specific way she organized her signing pen, the fact that she always unpacked her suitcase immediately upon entering a hotel room, as if establishing a temporary fortress. Elara learned that Leo's disorganization was a facade for a mind that was deeply, intuitively empathetic. He remembered the names of every bookstore clerk, asked fans about their lives, and could defuse any tense situation with a well-timed joke. She saw the way he genuinely cared about the people who loved their stories, and it chipped away at her perception of him as a brilliant but scatterbrained artist. She saw the fear in his eyes during takeoff and landing, the white-knuckled grip on the armrests, and felt an unexpected, protective urge to offer comfort. In Chicago, after a particularly grueling day of back-to-back interviews, they found themselves in the hotel bar. It was late, and they were both too wired to sleep. "I don't think I can answer what's your writing process one more time," Leo groaned, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "I'm going to start making things up. Oh, I only write by candlelight, wearing a monogrammed smoking jacket while listening to Gregorian chants." A genuine laugh escaped Elara, a sound he realized he heard far too rarely. It was warm and unguarded. "I usually just say we outline meticulously," she said. "It's easier than explaining the 3-day argument we had over the etymology of the Ethelgardian word for hope." "That was a vital argument," he protested, smiling. "The root word implied passive waiting. We needed one that implied active striving. And we found it," she conceded, raising her wine glass in a small salute. "We always do." Their eyes met over the rims of their glasses. The easy camaraderie felt new and precious. "Why do you do that?" Leo asked softly. "Do what?" "Shut down. Whenever things feel real. Between us." You retreat behind the professional partnership wall. Elara's smile faded. She looked down at her wine, the deep red liquid catching the low light. "It's safe, Leo. This is what we have. It works. It's the most important thing in my life. My career, this world we build, it's everything. I can't risk it on a tour romance that would inevitably implode and take everything else with it." "You think that's all this is? A tour romance?" "What else could it be?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "We're living in a bubble. We're tired, we're emotional, we're constantly performing the roles of people in love. It's a perfect storm for confused feelings." "What if my feelings aren't confused?" he said, his voice intense. "What if I felt this way for years, and I was just too afraid to cross the line because I was terrified of losing you too?" The confession lay between them, raw and honest. Elara looked utterly stricken. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it. The wall was back, higher and stronger than ever. "I can't, Leo," she finally said, her voice tight. "I'm not Anya. I don't know how to surrender." She stood up, placing some cash on the table. "We have an early flight to Phoenix. Good night." He watched her walk away, the straight, proud line of her back, and felt a profound sense of loss for something he'd never even had. The turning point came in San Francisco. It was the last leg of the tour, and the accumulated exhaustion and emotional turmoil had taken its toll. They were polite, professional, and utterly distant. The readings of the scene became technically perfect, but emotionally hollow. The magic was gone, and the fans could feel it. The questions at events became more pointed. "Are you two okay?" one fan asked. "You seem tired." They were. They were tired of the pretense. The conflict came to a head in their green room before the final event. It was a disagreement over a new contract Chimera Press was offering, a multi-book deal that would tie them together for the next decade. "It's a fantastic offer, Leo," Elara said, looking over the terms on her tablet. "Financial security, a guaranteed platform. We'd be fools not to take it." "I don't know if I can do it," Leo said, staring out at the city skyline. "Another 10 years of this." He gestured between them. "Of this tension, this pretending." "What are you saying?" Her voice was dangerously calm. "I'm saying maybe we need some time apart after this. Maybe we don't sign another contract right away. Maybe we write our own things for a while." The silence in the room was icy. He had finally said it. The unthinkable. "You're jeopardizing our entire career because of what?" Elara's composure shattered. The tablet clattered onto the table. "Because I won't play out some fantasy with you? This is our livelihood, Leo. This is what we've worked for our entire adult lives. This isn't about a fantasy, he shot back, turning to face her. This is about the fact that working with you is killing me. It's a constant reminder of what I can't have. You think I can just shut it off? You think I can go back to being just your writing partner after all this? Yes, she shouted, her eyes blazing. That's exactly what you have to do. Because that's all we are. That's all we can be. This partnership is the only thing that's real. You're a coward, Elara, he said, the words quiet and devastating. You're so terrified of feeling anything real that you'd rather live inside the safe, orderly world of your outlines and your contracts. Anya is braver than you'll ever be. He saw the words land like physical blows. Her face went pale, all the anger draining away to be replaced by a hurt so profound it made him ache. Get out, she whispered, her voice trembling. Elara. Get out. He left, slamming the green room door behind him. The argument had been their worst, their most destructive. It felt terrifyingly like an ending. The final event was a funeral march. They performed their parts, their smiles strained, their banter forced. When they read the final scene, it was a hollow shell. The words were there, but the soul was gone. The audience applauded, but it was polite, confused. The magic had well and truly died. Afterwards, in the crushing silence of their final shared car ride, they didn't speak. They arrived at the hotel, took the elevator up to their respective rooms on the same floor. They stood outside their adjacent doors, the gulf between them an ocean. Well, Elara said, her voice flat with exhaustion. I suppose this is good night. And goodbye. Leo just nodded, unable to speak. He watched as she slid her key card into the slot, the green light flashing. She paused, her hand on the door handle, her back to him. He saw her shoulders slump, a posture of utter defeat. And in that moment, he couldn't do it. He couldn't let it end like this. Elara, wait. She froze but didn't turn around. He walked the few steps to her, his heart hammering. All the fear, all the professional caution, it all seemed trivial compared to the yawning emptiness of a future without her in it. You were right, he said, his voice rough with emotion. It is safe. The partnership, the distance, it's the safest thing in the world. And I'm a coward, too. I was so afraid of ruining what we had that I was willing to walk away from what we could be. She slowly turned to face him. There were tears in her eyes, glistening in the harsh fluorescent light of the hallway. He had never seen her cry. That scene we keep reading, he continued, gesturing vaguely, as if the words were floating in the air around them. Cale's confession. I didn't just write that for him. I wrote it for me. I have loved you in every council meeting, on every battlefield. For us, that was every outline session, every brutal edit, every stupid argument over a comma. In every quiet moment I stole in your presence. Those were the moments I lived for, Elara. The moments when you'd forget to be professional and you'd just be... A tear escaped and traced a path down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. I'm not Cale, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. And you're not Anya. We're a mess. We're complicated. I'm disorganized and you're stubborn, and we drive each other insane. But God, Elara, the thought of not driving you insane anymore is unbearable. I don't want a professional partnership. I want you. All of you. The brilliant, infuriating, beautiful, terrified, real you. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing as his hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing away the tear. The line, she whispered, her voice breaking. To hell with the line, he whispered back. And he kissed her. It wasn't like the kiss in their book, a dramatic, world-altering culmination of epic longing. This was slower, softer, more real. It was a question and an answer, a surrender and a victory, a goodbye to the people they had been and a hello to the people they could become. It was filled with 7 years of suppressed longing, with the exhaustion of a 21-day tour, with the relief of finally telling the truth. When it finally broke apart, they were both breathless. Elara's eyes were still closed, as if savoring the feeling. When she opened them, they were clear, certain. "I'm still terrified," she admitted softly. "So am I," he said, "but let's be terrified together." She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. It felt more intimate than the kiss. It felt like a promise. She used her key card to open her door, and instead of closing it between them, she pulled him inside. 6 months later, Leo's Seattle study was still a mess, but it was now shared with a single, pristine notebook and a favorite pen that belonged to Elara. Rain pattered against the window, a familiar, comforting sound. They were supposed to be working on the new, standalone novel, the one Chimera Press had eagerly signed after the record-breaking success of the tour's finale. Pages were scattered across the large desk they now shared, but for the moment, work was forgotten. Elara was curled up on the sofa, reading a draft chapter, her brow furrowed in concentration. Leo was watching her, a soft smile on his face. "You're staring," she said without looking up. "I'm appreciating my co-author," he replied. She looked up then, and the smile she gave him was warm, open, and entirely his. The professional wall was gone, replaced by a deep, abiding affection that was better than any fictional romance they could ever write. Their life wasn't a fairy tale. They still argued passionately about plot points. He still left coffee mugs everywhere, and she still meticulously labeled everything in the fridge. But the argument now ended with laughter and kisses. The distance was gone, replaced by a partnership that was no longer just professional, but profoundly personal. The blurring of the lines hadn't ruined their story. It had simply given them a new one to write. And this one, they would write together, not as co-authors hiding behind characters, but as partners in every sense of the word.